In today's video, we're going to be discussing, is Vietnam a safe country to live, to visit? We're joined here with my wife Tung.
Hi.
She's a Vietnamese lady, and so she's going to be giving her valuable insight today. And for anyone new to the channel, my name's Cruz. I'm an American, and we're an American Vietnamese couple. We've been living together in a couple different countries, in Japan, in Thailand, and for the last 2 years we've been living here in Da Nang, Vietnam. So we're going to be discussing our thoughts, what we think about living in Vietnam. Is it a safe place? And we're going to be talking about a bunch of different areas. We're going to be talking about infrastructure, food safety, transportation safety on the roads, everything. We'll have some timestamps down below so you can check those out. We're also, of course, going to be talking about cycling safety, since that's one of the main things we do on this channel. But we're going to be talking about these things while we're out on the road, exploring some different areas here, some busier roads, some less busy roads. So let's go ahead and get started.
Let's go.
We're starting our video here today over by the river here, in between the ocean side and city side of Da Nang City. Da Nang is, I believe, the third largest city in Vietnam, but it's our favorite city in Vietnam. We're starting here just doing a little walking test just to show you guys that actually Vietnam is very walkable in some places, but also unfortunately not very walkable in others. So this is a very nice, very beautiful area here along the river. We got a nice wide walking path area, which is really nice because you can see a lot of people walking here. You can see a lot of people with their bikes. So we're going to cross the road here just so we can show you the other side and what the reality is of most sidewalks here in Vietnam. And as you can see, crossing the road can be very dangerous. There's a lot of traffic, and we're at a crosswalk area, but they don't always stop for you. So you kind of just got to start going and wave your hand, and it's actually pretty safe once you get used to it. The key is you got to walk continuously, and you can't stop walking. If you hesitate, that causes other people to react in a dangerous way. So you don't want to do that no matter what. Just keep going, and that's the safest way to go. So we're walking here on this other sidewalk here, and you can see a lot of the path is blocked here by motorbikes, and that's what I mean by it's very unfriendly, because a lot of vendors here, a lot of restaurants will use the sidewalk path so that it's actually very unfriendly for most pedestrians. And this sidewalk is actually better than many other examples here. You can see they got the yellow line here. That's a new thing they're starting to implement, where you're not supposed to block anything past that yellow line. So it's improving a lot recently, but it still obviously could be a lot better. So we're going to start our ride here on the sidewalk. And the other nice thing about these sidewalks is they're usually built pretty well and pretty solid, but there are some safety concerns in some areas, especially where there's construction going on. I'll often find sidewalks or areas where there's just giant holes that you need to be careful about. If you're not looking where you're going, you could easily fall into one of those holes and hurt your legs. For the most part, it's pretty safe, but you do need to be cautious just about just random things lying around, garbage, stray wires, and holes. This area is a very big tourist area, so this sidewalk is kept up a little bit better than others, but you can see that one tile piece was broken off there. Very nice area, very safe, lots of vending machines. They've also got a lot of rental bikes now in the city, so you can rent those. It's really cheap, I believe. We haven't used them yet because we got a lot of our own bikes. So next, let's go on the main road and we'll talk about some of the main road safety. So for newcomers to Vietnam, people who aren't used to Southeast Asian traffic, Vietnamese traffic can be really intimidating and really scary, but actually I found that it's not that bad, especially once you get used to it. Overall, the speeds are a lot slower compared to the average speeds of traffic in the US. A lot more people are on motorbikes, so the cars are more aware, especially of bicycles. They're aware of smaller vehicles, motorbikes, and food vendors, bicycles, and even a lot of runners are in the streets. That being said though, you always have to be cautious on the roads here in Vietnam. We just pulled out into the road. People will pull out into the road at almost anywhere, at any point. So you always need to be extremely cautious. As cyclists, we tend to ride on the far right side of the road, so we're not obstructing cars, other vehicles. But at the same time, that's dangerous because people will be coming from the sidewalks or from their houses just randomly into the street. And you especially need to be careful about these kind of situations with doors. Thankfully, that guy was looking back. That's what you should do, but not everyone does that. So I like to keep a nice little gap Even though these cars are parked, there's no way I'm cycling close to them. But you can see, we're just riding here in our little lane, and this road is especially nice. Very wide road here, 3 lanes, well 4 lanes if you count the parking lane. So this is extremely wide, nice modern road. That's one of the things we love about Da Nang City, is a lot of the roads here, the infrastructure is much more modern and much more newly built compared to other cities like Hanoi, which is older and has older infrastructure. You can see people on those like electronic wheelchairs just riding here in the street too. So, I mean, Vietnam does have a very large number of traffic accidents. We see accidents almost every day, but a lot of that is caused from just reckless drivers with their motorbikes, and especially people bombing into intersections without looking. So yes, if you're planning to go on the roads yourself, if you're renting a motorbike, you definitely need to drive with extra caution. And once you get used to it though, I feel like it's very easy to predict most of the traffic here. And we haven't had any accidents ourselves. We've logged thousands of miles, thousands of kilometers here on our road bikes, on our casual bikes. We haven't had a single incident, so you just gotta be careful and you gotta understand how the traffic works here. The rules aren't the same as your home country. So overall, yeah, I would say it is a bit chaotic, but I wouldn't say it's that dangerous as long as you're driving extra cautiously. You do need to be careful about situations like that. Even though we should have the right of way, even in Vietnam, technically we have the right of way, but a lot of larger vehicles will just sort of force their way and the smaller vehicle will need to yield. So we're 50-50 with that. If we have the momentum, we feel like we can get in front of them and they're gonna stop, we make eye contact, we'll go for it. But if we see that they're just gonna bomb it and cut us off, we have enough reaction time to brake. So we try and judge each situation differently. We got a lot of the mini cruise companies over here for their cruises of the river here. That's a pretty cool sight to see at night. We haven't been on any of those cruises ourselves, but we've seen them from here on the riverside. What do you think of Vietnamese traffic? Safe?
Compared with Japan, not safe.
Yeah, compared to Japan, not safe.
You know, I live in Japan.
Yeah.
And Japan is very safe traffic. But when I back to Vietnam, oh my God, crazy traffic.
Crazy. But no accident.
No, yeah.
Just crazy.
Just crazy.
Yeah. In Japan, you can relax.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, no relax.
No, be careful.
Be careful.
You should look left side, right side.
Yeah. It also helps if you know the right roads to go to. So for example, this area, we know all the good roads here in Da Nang. This area is beautiful, another super wide road, no traffic, beautiful views of the river, a lot of street vendors, and a very cool place to ride and enjoy yourselves. The next topic I want to talk about is food safety, water safety, and overall health safety. So first things first, do not drink most water here in Vietnam. It is not filtered, it is not sanitary. There's a lot of nasty bacteria in there. So all of our drinking water, we have to order from a company. We get some giant gallon jugs that we get delivered to our apartment. If we ever go to any restaurant, they're gonna serve proper bottled water. But yeah, you don't wanna drink water from the tap here in Vietnam. That's a big no-no. Some modern apartments might have a built-in water filter, so in those situations, maybe it's okay. But for 90% of the situations here, do not drink the water. As long as you order your drinking water, I mean, we haven't had any issues. It's just one other thing you gotta do here. Not a problem. And every restaurant, every store here will sell bottled water. So really not a problem, just something to be aware of. The next thing I wanna talk about is food safety. So you can see there's a lot of these food vendors here on the side of the street. Actually, they used to have a lot of them here on the riverside, on the ocean side, but it was creating such a huge problem where like it was obstructing people walking. All the tourists didn't enjoy it, so they forced them to go to the other side of the road. But these places are really hit or miss. Like they don't really have a licensing system here in Vietnam. Maybe they do, but if they do, they don't really enforce it. And so there's also not many sanitization standards. So you really don't know how clean everything is that you're getting from those places. We rarely will go to those street vendors other than certain foods. One thing that we like to get is the sugarcane juice. Like that's pretty, you can't really mess that up. They put it in a plastic cup, they just squeeze the sugarcane. So, but other food, like it's been sitting there all day possibly, and you don't know if it's gone bad, you don't know if it's left over from the day before. So I really don't trust those places unless it's one that I've been to before or that people have recommended to me. I will not eat most street food here in Vietnam unless it has, like I said before, a reputation or a recommendation from someone who vouches for them. You really don't know what you can trust here. And that even goes for some of the main restaurants here. So the street vendors definitely need to be careful, but even the restaurants that have an actual building, an inside eating area, I found those places to be hit or miss as well. I've gotten food poisoning here in Vietnam a few times. Not recently, because we've been improving, like picking what places that we go to, but I will not go to a random restaurant that we haven't researched before because I don't know, like, are they washing their dishes? Are they using soap when they wash their dishes? And are they storing their dishes on the floor? One kind of example with this is even going to my wife's hometown. So some of you guys know, my wife is from the countryside here in Vietnam. Her family has run a restaurant for many years. And for Vietnamese people, they're used to the sanitization standards here, but I am not, my body is not. And for a while, the first few times that I visited my wife's hometown, I would get sick almost every single time. And I think a big part of that was just the sanitization standards there was different than what I was used to. At the time, they didn't wash their dishes in like a sink. They had some buckets and then they were mostly washing them on the floor. And for me, it was just kind of like really dirty. And luckily recently they've upgraded their kitchen. They have a more modern kitchen now. So I didn't get sick the last time I went there. And so hopefully that's a sign that things are improving. But yeah, the sanitization standards here may be better if you're used to them. My wife hasn't really had any issues because she's just grown up with it her whole life. She has defenses to it, but for me, maybe I have those defenses now because I've been here a few years. But really be careful about what restaurants you go to. I would never go to a random restaurant that I haven't checked for solid reviews. So unfortunately, you do have to be extra cautious with your food safety here. And for overall health safety, one big concern we have is with the air quality. That's a big reason why we chose to live here in Da Nang City, because it's by far the biggest city in Vietnam with the best air quality. It's by the ocean. We get a lot of fresh air from the ocean. And compared to the big cities like Hanoi, Hanoi is a nightmare of air pollution. And every time I visit Hanoi, it's just smoggy, gross. My wife's older sister has an apartment in Hanoi on one of the higher floors. We stayed there, and some days I couldn't even see outside because it was just gray. And the air pollution is off the charts. So that definitely takes a toll on your health, especially in the long run. So that's something you really need to be careful about. But there are areas in Vietnam where the air quality is really good. For example, in my wife's hometown in the countryside, the air quality is very good. And here in Da Nang, for most of the year, the air quality is really good. I have noticed that the air quality goes a little bad in March around that time, just because of the burning season in other nearby countries. A lot of the bad air from those other countries will come back here. But for most of the rest of the year, the air quality here is amazing. We sometimes will ride with masks when we're riding here on these main roads. So you do get some bad pollution from a lot of the older motorbikes. They have a lot of nasty gas and fumes on the older ones. The newer bikes are great. The newer cars, most of the cars here are new, so we don't have any issues with exhaust from the cars. But we often see these super ancient motorbikes which should not be on the road anymore, just with a giant trail of pollution. And I really hate those bikes. I wish the government would do something about that. But I understand that not everyone here can afford to get a new bike, so it is what it is, unfortunately. Oh, some glass here. There's unfortunately a lot of glass on the road sometimes from accidents that don't get cleaned up, so you gotta be cautious about that so we don't get any flat tires. We're actually climbing up. This is the biggest bridge in Da Nang City. There's a lot of bridges. Some people call it the Bridge City, but this is the biggest one. You get an amazing view up at the top, which I'll show you guys. We're here almost at the top of the bridge, and check out this awesome view we get of the city. I hope you can hear me because it is very, very windy up here. So this side is the city side, Da Nang City, and over here is the ocean side. We live over here around this area. And on the other side, you can see we got some mountains off in the distance. There's the port over here actually, the Da Nang port. There's actually a big cruise docked over there. I didn't know they docked cruises. But yeah, it is crazy windy up here, so let's get down real quick. It's a kind of a bit scary being up here. So we're gonna get off the big road now, get it back on some smaller side roads here, a bit more quiet, a bit more scenic. But the next thing I wanted to talk about in terms of safety was natural disasters. Oh wow. Looks like they're doing some work here. In our experience living here in Vietnam, the main natural disasters that we've had to deal with is very heavy, like big tropical rainstorms, typhoons, and mudslides. I think mudslides is one of the most dangerous ones because we live in an area with a lot of mountains. So I believe it was 2 years ago, in our first year here, there was this really bad storm and it destroyed a lot of the roads here. A lot of the houses were flooded and it was really bad. So going back to the infrastructure part here, they don't have much great infrastructure for dealing with water flow and flooding, unfortunately. And because of that, there was just a lot of damage that was done in that incident. And one of our favorite areas to ride up here, Monkey Mountain, that road was closed for a good long time. So because of those mudslides, we weren't able to go in that area. It was just too dangerous. And it took them a long time to repair the road. So going back into the food sanitization, this is partly what I'm talking about here. You can see they're preparing this food here, and this is just on the main roads. And they do this with a lot of different foods. They use it to dry out the foods, and I mean, so many bikes come on these roads, and yeah, I don't really necessarily want to eat this stuff.
That is baby shrimp.
Baby shrimp?
Yeah, it's make like soup or snack.
For super snacks?
Yeah.
でも道でやってるか
It's the first time I saw that.
Oh, really?
Can't believe.
I see all the time.
Yeah, no, sometimes they have the sitaga, so no.
The plastic. Yeah, sometimes they use the tarp.
On near the Monkey Mountain, I saw that.
Yeah,
But this is
that one's
first
okay.
time. Yeah, this is the first time I saw it.
Directly on the pavement. Yeah.
And
You want to eat?
no.
So yeah, be careful. Be careful with the food here. And you can see this is a pretty big operation. They've got a lot of people doing this here. But yeah, going back to the natural disasters, other than the flooding and the big rainstorms, we haven't had too much of an issue here. In Japan, we experienced a lot of earthquakes, and that was really worrying for us. We haven't experienced any earthquakes here. I do think they happen occasionally. I don't know if the infrastructure is built well to withstand them, but fortunately there don't seem to be too many earthquakes here. We got to turn back on the main road here. In my hometown in the US, we don't have too many natural disasters there either. So where I'm from in Michigan, we mostly just have tornadoes, and they're really not that rare, and most modern houses can withstand most tornadoes now, it seems. So you don't see too much bad news about that. So natural disasters here don't seem to be too bad, but if you do see in the news that a big storm is approaching, you do want to take all the precautions, stock up on some extra food, stock up on some extra water, because you don't know, there might be a huge power outage, something bad might happen, you might not be able to get any food, all the local restaurants might be closed, so we always have an emergency supply of food and water in our apartment just in case. So the next category I want to talk about is going to be crime. So both petty crime and violent crime. Let's start with petty crime. So that's unfortunately one thing that is quite common here in Vietnam. So for example, when we park our bikes somewhere, we have our storage bags on our bikes. Sometimes we keep extra tools in there, some extra parts. We have had some instances where people tried to steal Tuong's bike when she parked it in a parking area. Luckily, she double locks her bike, so the bike wasn't stolen, but some of the spokes were damaged from the lock getting moved when they tried to run the bike away. And then everything in the bag was just dropped on the floor. That's our only experience with theft here so far, but we do hear about all different kinds of theft here, like people getting their phones stolen if you leave them out on a table, or even if you're just walking on the sidewalk here holding your phone out, you might have someone with a motorbike drive by and take it. I think that's really only common in the big cities like Hanoi and Saigon. We haven't really heard or seen too many instances that here in Da Nang. That's another reason why we like it here, just less crime compared to the bigger cities. Another unfortunate thing here is there seems to be a lot of pet theft, especially with dogs. You really have to be careful with your pets, with your dogs, if you leave them outside. There's a lot of camera footage that you see popped up on social media where people like have a pet inside the gate in front of their house, and then someone with a bike drives by, comes in, grabs the pet and steals him and leaves. So that's another thing to be very careful about. That being said though, there are a lot of like dog owners like right here, and a lot of people here walking dogs, so even a lot of the local people are very angry about that and trying to improve the situation and make it less common. But unfortunately there's just a black market for dogs here, because some areas there still are restaurants that serve dog meat, and it's just an easy way for people without jobs to make money. So I really hope they increase the punishment for those kinds of crimes. So definitely I would say petty crime is a bit higher here in Vietnam compared to my home country like the US, and especially compared to Japan. There's almost no petty crime in Japan. It's really nice there. Going on to violent crime, that's where I think there's a big difference. I would say there's almost no violent crime here in Vietnam. I've never witnessed anything myself. You barely see anything in the news about it. If anything, it only comes down to like road rage incidents. So for example, if there's a crash and like, I don't know, people are angry at each other, they might get into a fist fight or something. Tung has told me that like some of the bike gangs here, some of the guys carry machetes. So you really don't want to anger anyone who's in a bike gang because they might pull out a machete, but I've never seen that in person, but I have seen a few stories about it on some news websites, but it doesn't seem that common. Compared to the US though, where like violent crime is like crazy high, it seems. There's a lot of gun violence. The amount of deaths from guns like every year is insane. Just a lot of people being assaulted for a million different reasons. And it's really worrying, especially because there are some people who attack like Asians in some parts of the US. Like the US is a huge country, so of course some areas are safer than others, but still it's a fact that some areas, some people might target Asian people, especially Asian women. But here in Vietnam, I've never felt targeted for being a foreigner. The only example I can think of is if you're a foreigner, like a white foreigner, and you're driving a motorbike and you don't have a helmet or a license, like yeah, you're more likely to get pulled over because the police here know that most foreigners don't have an international driving license, and technically you're not supposed to drive without a helmet. They won't really pull over Vietnamese people doing that, but if they're a foreigner, they'll pull you over. So I mean, yeah, there's some targeting like that, but in terms of like crime being targeted for that, like never had any issues here. At first I was worried like saying that I'm American, because some countries you visit, you really don't want to say you're American. You're supposed to say like you're Canadian instead, because some people in some countries have a lot of anger towards the US, understandably. But none of that here. Like everyone, whenever I tell them I'm from the US, they're just really excited and really happy to meet me. There's no anger, there's no resentment over the war, which is really cool. I even met some of Tung's family, like some of her older relatives who even fought in the Vietnamese War, and they were still really happy to meet me, so that was really cool. Going back to the health safety standard, this is one thing I don't like. I don't know if it shows in the camera very well, but you can see a bunch of smoke here. These people are just burning stuff in front of their house, and people do that everywhere here in Vietnam. They'll just burn stuff in the streets, and it is extremely toxic fumes. It smells horrible, especially if you're exercising or doing a hard effort and you have to breathe that in. Like that can't be good for your health. So, and that's throughout the whole country, in the big cities, in the countryside. I'm amazed that people do it in the cities here, in like dense populated areas, and no one says anything. We don't have a dryer here in Vietnam, so we hang dry all our clothes. And one day, like We had all our windows, everything closed in our apartment. We're using the air conditioning, and we started smelling smoke. And we looked outside and we saw just this giant cloud of smoke, and someone was burning like a massive amount of stuff right near our apartment. And so all of our clothes we had to rewash because of all the smoke from just people decided to start burning stuff. And yeah, so it's kind of a weird balance, because in some hands, like, Vietnam is an extremely safe country. I feel safer here than in the US for like most situations, strangely enough, especially with my wife. But on other hands, in the like more discrete areas, it can be really unsafe with like the food sanitization standards and the air quality and stuff. But you can minimize that. Like I said, we wear masks if it's a really bad day, or if we're riding in heavy traffic. And we're really careful about the restaurants that we go to. We cook most of our food, or I should say my wife cooks most of the food. So we really minimize that, and we live a really healthy lifestyle here. But continuing what I just said about how I feel actually safer here in Vietnam compared to the US, the reason I say that is because one test I like to do is do I feel comfortable leaving my wife outside alone at night here? And if I ask myself that question, like, anywhere in Japan, 100%, like any street, any alley, any time of day, midnight, 3 a.m. in Japan, I'd feel safe like my wife being there alone. Like, that's how safe Japan is. I feel pretty similarly here in Vietnam. Maybe not like 100% like Japan, but probably like 90, 95%. Like, maybe there's some bad areas in the big city that I haven't been to yet. But for the most part, I feel like extremely safe here in Vietnam. For my wife, I feel like comfortable her going outside alone at night. Like, if she goes to visit her friends, she rides her bike there. She comes back around midnight, like, no issues. I don't feel concerned for her at all. But I don't think I feel the same way if we're in the US. We're gonna be moving to the US here pretty soon, actually, but there's a lot of areas in the US where I would not feel comfortable leaving her alone, especially like walking alone somewhere in certain areas. I can't say the same thing in the US. And that's why I think overall I feel safer in Vietnam. That's more from the like female perspective, thinking about my wife's safety rather than my own. As a male, I feel safe in both countries. You can see this is how you're supposed to do it. They have a tarp that protects it from the ground, and that makes it a bit safer. So they're doing it the right way over here. So if you want to buy those baby shrimp, you should buy it over here, not from those other guys. And actually, from a male perspective, I guess I do feel safer here because one big thing, I don't have to worry about guns here. In the US, it's a sad reality that no matter where you go, there's a risk of there being like a mass shooting. And I mean, it's just a statistical probability at this point. No matter where you go, the movie theater, restaurant, supermarket, a sporting event, like, there's the chance of that happening. We got some monkeys over here. And when I was visiting the US, that was actually something in the back of my mind. Like, I still felt safe for the most part, but still, like, to have to think that it's so unfortunate that that's the reality for people living in the US. Like, I couldn't imagine having kids and sending them to school, like, considering the number of shootings in schools. Like, it's just crazy. And you don't have to worry about that here. So yeah, there's some violent incidents sometimes, but the worst thing they do is they have a knife. I don't know, I take my chances against someone with a knife versus someone with a gun any day. But that being said, like, I don't know, overall, the US is still a really safe place. We're still deciding to move there because it's still a great opportunity for us, and there's other reasons, like political safety. I guess that's another category we can talk about. And the reality is, like, as a foreigner here in Vietnam, I can enjoy my life here being married to a Vietnamese woman, but I'm never going to have the same rights unless I can get citizenship somehow. But it's very rare for foreigners to get citizenship here. So yeah, you don't have exact equal rights here as a minority, and you don't really have many pathways to get those rights if you wanted to. Whereas that's one great thing about the US is there's just a lot of protections for minorities and different communities. And my wife has the opportunity to get her US citizenship, to get the US passport, and have all the same protection. That's one big reason why we're deciding to move to the US. The US is also a democracy, so you have freedom of speech, freedom of press, and you're able to criticize people in power and have some level of protection. Whereas the same isn't true here in Vietnam. Vietnam is a communist country. I think a lot of people forget that. But a lot of the economy is capitalist. It's a weird mix. Like, it's similar to China in some ways, but it's an extremely capitalist country. There's so many people that run their own businesses here. It doesn't feel very communist, but the government is communist. They also don't have freedom of press here, and you have to be really careful about what you post online. I don't think you can criticize like the government and certain companies to a certain extent, but I think you have to be really careful walking that line here. Like, I'm making this video, like, this kind of stuff is okay, but you do really have to be careful about not making enemies in the wrong places. You don't have the protections that you would have in the US. And that's the reality of like living in a democratic country with freedom of press versus living in a communist country. I don't want this video to get too political though, so I think that's all I'll talk about regarding that. We're making our way back here into the city. Beautiful, freshly paved road, beautiful ocean views. Check out those waves. We absolutely love riding here in Da Nang. Like, we feel super safe here. We love calling this place home. And even after we move to the US, I'm pretty sure we're gonna be trying to come back here almost every winter if we can afford it. We absolutely love it here. We're finishing up our ride here over by the beach. Got some little doggies and beautiful sunset here over the beach. Before we finish today's video though, we wanna ask Thun her opinion. What do you think is the most safe and least safe part of Vietnam?
The most dangerous, I think, is the food. I always saw, I'm watching video every day, and I saw they make the fake things, or they put drugs, medicine to the food. Like example, the vegetable more high grow up.
Yeah, to grow quickly.
Yeah, or the meat more heavy or more fresh, look like fresh. They put the
Color.
yeah, put the color. They put more water on the meat, and it will be more heavy and something like that. I saw a lot of video.
Scary.
Scary.
Okay, most safe part of Vietnam?
I think is the air quality, except big city like Hanoi or Saigon, but another city is okay, still okay.
Yeah, and countryside?
Yeah, in countryside, fresh air
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah.
And like Da Nang is okay.
Okay.
Da Nang is good.
And the last thing we want to mention is some tips to be extra safe if you're traveling in Vietnam. So do you have any tips?
Be careful.
Oh, so helpful.
Yeah, no, look the left side or when you...
Okay, look carefully at the road
Yeah,
when you cross.
and don't... Be careful, look your luggage. Don't carry a lot of money, the cash.
Yeah.
And in Vietnam, you can pay in QR code.
The QR code?
Yeah, a lot of restaurants or food shops, they have a QR code and you can pay that.
Okay.
And for taxi, you can book the ride on the Grab, more cheaper and safe.
Yeah, so for the taxi, you want to use the Grab application.
Yeah.
It's safer to use the application because it's a fixed price and you can pay with your credit card. You don't have to worry about the cash.
Yeah.
We never take the normal taxi.
Yeah.
The normal taxi will always be more expensive.
Yes.
That's one other thing we didn't talk about is the scams or the price gouging. So with me being a foreigner, the price is often more higher.
Yeah.
So Trung often buys all our groceries at the market.
Yeah.
It's cheaper for her because she's Vietnamese and she can argue the prices. Not every place does it, but a lot of places do, especially in the tourist area.
Yeah.
So another thing to be careful is you can research the price before you go. So if you want to buy some fruit, you can check the average price of bananas before you go. And if they try and charge you more, just say no, and then they'll usually give you the actual price later once they realize that you're not going to be scammed easily. So yeah, there's a couple different things like that you can be more careful about. But maybe we'll save that for a separate video. Anyway, overall, we think Vietnam is a very safe a very fun country to visit, and we really enjoy our life here. So if we missed anything in the video, let us know down in the comments. And before you go, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give a like. And if you want to help support our channel, you can check out our Patreon page. And we also want to say a special thank you to all of our awesome supporters over on Patreon. We don't make a lot of money on YouTube, so all of your guys' support gives a huge help and lets us continue filming more videos like this on our channel. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time here on Tubo Cruise.